Have you ever said something you thought no one would hear, only to discover that the worst possible person was listening? Sometimes a single whispered confession can turn your entire world upside down. What started as an innocent conversation between friends became the catalyst for an office transformation that nobody saw coming. If you're ready to discover how one overheard comment changed everything in a Manhattan corporate tower, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like, because this story will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last second. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor, creating a rhythmic soundtrack that masked the whispered conversations echoing through the corridors of Sterling and Associates. Maya Rodriguez adjusted her wireless headset as she finished her third client call of the morning, her fingers dancing across the keyboard with practiced precision. The marketing department buzzed with its usual energy, but Maya felt the familiar weight of frustration pressing down on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Another brilliant strategy shot down by the Ice Queen, she muttered under her breath, closing the presentation she'd spent weeks perfecting. The quarterly campaign she'd designed had been dismissed with nothing more than a cold, insufficient market penetration analysis from the corner office. Jessica Chen, her cubicle neighbor and closest friend at the company, rolled her chair closer. Her concerned expression was visible over the partition that separated their workstations. Rough morning with Victoria again? Maya glanced toward the glass-walled executive suite at the far end of the floor, where Victoria Sterling sat behind her mahogany desk, her silhouette sharp and commanding against the storm-darkened sky. Even from this distance, the CEO's presence was magnetic. The way she held herself, the calculated movements of her hands as she reviewed documents, the intensity that seemed to radiate from her very being. I swear, Jess, sometimes I think she gets some twisted pleasure from crushing my ideas, Maya whispered, leaning closer to her friend. Her voice carried a mixture of professional frustration and something deeper, something she'd been trying to ignore for months. It's like she sees right through me, you know? Like she knows exactly which buttons to push to get under my skin. Jessica nodded sympathetically, but there was something mischievous in her eyes. Come on, Maya. You've been working here for 2 years. Surely you've figured out how to handle the Dragon Lady by now. Maya's laugh was hollow, but her gaze drifted back to Victoria's office. The CEO had removed her blazer, revealing a crisp white shirt that accentuated her elegant figure. There was something undeniably captivating about the way Victoria commanded attention without even trying. The authority in her posture, the intelligence that sparked in her green eyes during board meetings, the way her auburn hair caught the light when she turned her head. That's the problem, Jess, Maya said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. She glanced around to make sure no one else was listening, then leaned even closer to her friend. I hate working for her. I hate the way she makes me feel like everything I do is inadequate. I hate how she can destroy my confidence with just one look. She paused, her heart racing as she prepared to voice the confession that had been eating at her for months. But here's the thing, and I can't believe I'm saying this. She's absolutely gorgeous, like ridiculously attractive. Sometimes I catch myself staring during meetings, and I have to remind myself that I'm supposed to be taking notes, not admiring her profile. Jessica's eyebrows shot up, a knowing smile spreading across her face. Maya Rodriguez, are you telling me you have a crush on the Ice Queen herself? God, don't say it like that, Maya groaned, covering her face with her hands. It's so unprofessional. But there's something about her intensity, her confidence, the way she owns every room she walks into. Even when she's tearing apart my proposals, part of me is just mesmerized by her. What Maya didn't notice was the soft hiss of the elevator doors opening behind them. She was too caught up in her confession, too focused on finally voicing the internal conflict that had been tormenting her for months. She didn't see the familiar figure step onto the floor, moving with the silent grace of someone accustomed to observing before being observed. I mean, look at her, Maya continued, gesturing toward the executive suite with a mixture of admiration and frustration. She's built this company from nothing. She's brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely stunning. It's like she was designed to drive me crazy in every possible way. I hate that I'm attracted to someone who makes my professional life miserable, but I can't help it. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like if things were different, if we weren't in this impossible boss-employee dynamic. Behind them, Victoria Sterling stood perfectly still in the shadows cast by the cubicle walls, her expression unreadable. She had returned to retrieve a file she'd forgotten, planning to make a quick trip back to her office. Instead, she found herself frozen in place, listening to words she never expected to hear. Her green eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, but with a complex mixture of surprise, intrigue, and something that might have been recognition. Maya's voice grew even softer, as if the words were being pulled from the deepest part of her soul. The worst part is that I think she sees right through me, like she knows exactly what effect she has on people, on me. Sometimes when she looks at me during meetings, I swear there's something there, some kind of acknowledgement. But then she'll criticize my work, and I remember that I'm just another employee to her. Victoria's lips curved into the faintest suggestion of a smile. She took a careful step backward, her designer heels making no sound on the carpet. For a moment, she considered making her presence known, but something held her back. This revelation changed everything, not just her understanding of Maya, but her perception of the dynamic that had been building between them for months. "You know what the craziest part is?" Maya asked, her voice barely audible now. "I don't even know if I want to impress her professionally anymore, or if I just want her to see me as more than just another employee. It's all so confusing and inappropriate, and I should probably start looking for another job before I do something really stupid." As Maya finished speaking, Victoria Sterling silently retreated to the elevator, her mind racing with possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider. The game, she realized, had just become infinitely more interesting. The next morning arrived with the kind of crisp Manhattan clarity that made the city feel electric with possibility. Maya sat at her desk, nursing her third cup of coffee and trying to focus on the quarterly reports spread across her monitor. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying yesterday's confession to Jessica on an endless loop. The vulnerability of voicing her conflicted feelings about Victoria had left her feeling exposed, as if she'd accidentally left her emotional diary open on her desk. "Earth to Maya," Jessica's voice cut through her thoughts. "You've been staring at that same spreadsheet for 20 minutes. Everything okay?" Before Maya could respond, the familiar chime of an incoming email drew her attention. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw the sender: Victoria Sterling, CEO. The subject line was simple and direct. "Project consultation. My office, 10 a.m. "That's weird," Maya muttered, checking the time. It was a.m., giving her barely 13 minutes to prepare. Victoria never requested one-on-one meetings with mid-level marketing associates. Their interactions were limited to department meetings and the occasional presentation review, always conducted with multiple people present. Jessica peered over the cubicle divider, reading the email over Maya's shoulder. "When was the last time she called you for a private meeting?" "Never," Maya replied, her pulse quickening. "This is completely unprecedented. What if she heard us yesterday? What if someone told her about our conversation?" The paranoia crept in like fog, clouding her judgment and making her question every interaction from the previous day. "Maya, you're being ridiculous. The woman runs a $100 million company. She doesn't have time to eavesdrop on office gossip." Jessica's reassurance felt hollow, even to her own ears. At exactly 10 a.m., Maya found herself standing outside Victoria's office, her hand hovering over the heavy glass door. Through the transparent wall, she could see Victoria at her desk, her attention focused on a document. The CEO looked impeccable as always, her charcoal suit perfectly tailored, her auburn hair pulled back in a sophisticated chignon that revealed the elegant line of her neck. "Come in, Maya." Victoria's voice carried through the glass before Maya could knock. Even her ability to sense someone's presence without looking up seemed like another manifestation of her uncanny awareness. The office was a study in controlled luxury, minimalist furniture with clean lines, abstract art that probably cost more than Maya's annual salary, and that massive desk that seemed to emphasize the power differential between them. The storm from yesterday had passed, leaving the windows crystal clear with views that stretched across Manhattan's concrete and steel landscape. "Please, sit." Victoria gestured to one of the leather chairs positioned in front of her desk. Her voice was warmer than usual, lacking the sharp edge that typically characterized their professional interactions. Maya settled into the chair, hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. Victoria closed the folder she'd been reading and gave Maya her complete attention, something that had never happened in their 2 years of working together. "I've been reviewing your recent project proposals," Victoria began, her green eyes studying Maya with an intensity that made her skin flush. "There's a sophistication in your strategic thinking that I haven't given proper credit to." The compliment hit Maya like a physical force. After months of criticism and dismissal, these words felt surreal. "Thank you, Ms. Sterling. That means more than you know." "Victoria," the CEO corrected, a slight smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I think we can dispense with formalities, don't you?" Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. The shift in Victoria's demeanor was subtle but unmistakable. The way she leaned slightly forward, the softer tone in her voice, the way her eyes seemed to linger a fraction longer than professional courtesy required. "I've been thinking about the campaign you proposed for the Henderson account," Victoria continued, opening a different folder. "Your insights about millennial consumer behavior were particularly astute. I may have been too hasty in my initial assessment." "I appreciate that," Maya managed, still processing the transformation in Victoria's attitude. "I put a lot of research into understanding that demographic's purchasing patterns." Victoria stood and moved to the window, her silhouette sharp against the city skyline. "Tell me, Maya, what drives your passion for this work? What gets you excited about creating these campaigns?" The question was personal in a way that caught Maya off guard. She watched Victoria's reflection in the glass, noting the way the light caught the subtle highlights in her hair, the elegant curve of her profile. "I love the psychology of it," Maya answered honestly. "Understanding what motivates people, what speaks to their desires and fears. Every campaign is like solving a puzzle, finding the perfect message that will resonate with exactly the right audience." Victoria turned back toward her, and Maya was struck by the intensity of her gaze. There was something different in those green eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there before, an interest that felt personal rather than professional. "That's a fascinating perspective," Victoria said, moving back toward her desk but not sitting down. Instead, she perched on the edge, bringing herself closer to Maya's eye level. The position was intimate, breaking down the formal barrier that the desk usually provided. "I have a proposition for you," Victoria continued, her voice dropping to a more confidential tone. "I'm developing a new initiative, something that will require fresh thinking and innovative approaches. I'd like you to work directly with me on this project." Maya's breath caught. "Directly with you?" "Yes. It would mean longer hours, closer collaboration, and a significant increase in responsibility. Are you interested?" The offer hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that went far beyond professional advancement. Maya sensed that this moment was a crossroads, that her answer would determine not just her career trajectory, but the entire nature of her relationship with Victoria. "I'm very interested," Maya replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Victoria's smile was genuine, transforming her face in a way that made Maya's heart skip. "Excellent. We'll start tomorrow. And Maya?" She paused, her eyes holding Maya's with unmistakable intent. "I have a feeling this collaboration is going to be very educational for both of us." As Maya left the office, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just changed. The game, as Victoria might say, had officially begun. 3 weeks into their collaboration, Maya found herself working later than ever before. The executive floor had emptied hours ago, leaving only the soft glow of desk lamps and the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. She stretched in her chair, rolling her shoulders to ease the tension that had built up from hours of poring over market research and consumer data. The project Victoria had assigned her was unlike anything she'd worked on before. A complete rebranding initiative for their flagship client that would either revolutionize their market position or cost the company millions. The pressure was immense, but so was the thrill of working directly with someone whose business acumen she'd admired from afar for so long. "Still here?" Victoria's voice cut through the silence, causing Maya to look up from her computer screen. The CEO stood in the doorway of the conference room they'd claimed as their temporary headquarters, having shed her blazer somewhere during the day. Her white silk blouse was slightly wrinkled, and a few strands of hair had escaped from her usually perfect chignon. Somehow, this slightly disheveled version of Victoria Sterling was even more attractive than her polished professional persona. "Just finishing up the demographic breakdowns for the focus groups," Maya replied, saving her work and closing the laptop. "I think I've identified 3 distinct consumer segments we haven't been targeting effectively." Victoria moved into the room, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the executive kitchen. She set one down in front of Maya, the gesture surprisingly thoughtful. "You don't have to work yourself to exhaustion, you know. This project is important, but not at the expense of your well-being." Maya accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. It was perfectly prepared, stronger than the office standard, with just a touch of cream. The fact that Victoria had noticed her preferences felt intimate in a way that made her pulse quicken. "I appreciate the concern," Maya said, taking a sip. "But I want to get this right. This opportunity means everything to me." Victoria settled into the chair directly across from her, closer than she would have sat 3 weeks ago. The conference table that had initially felt like a barrier between them now seemed to shrink with each passing day, their professional distance gradually eroding into something more personal. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria's tone was casual, but Maya caught the underlying current of genuine curiosity. "Of course. What made you want to work in marketing? When I read your resume, your background suggested you could have gone into psychology, maybe research. What drew you to the corporate world?" Maya leaned back in her chair, considering the question. Their conversations had grown more personal over the past few weeks, but Victoria rarely asked about her motivations or background. "Honestly, I wanted to understand power dynamics," Maya admitted. "How influence works, how people make decisions, what drives behavior in high-stakes environments. Marketing felt like applied psychology with real-world consequences." Victoria's eyes sharpened with interest. "And what have you learned about power dynamics in your time here?" The question felt loaded, pregnant with implications that extended far beyond professional curiosity. Maya met Victoria's gaze directly, sensing that her answer mattered more than she fully understood. "I've learned that power isn't just about position or authority," Maya said slowly. "Sometimes the most interesting power dynamics happen in the spaces between what people say and what they mean, in the tensions and attractions that exist beneath the surface of professional relationships." A slow smile spread across Victoria's face, as if Maya had just confirmed something she'd suspected. "That's a very sophisticated observation. Have you experienced these tensions personally?" The directness of the question should have made Maya uncomfortable, but instead, she felt a rush of exhilaration. They were finally approaching the elephant in the room, the undercurrent that had been building between them since that first private meeting. "I think," Maya said carefully, "that some of the most compelling dynamics occur when there are multiple layers of complexity, when professional respect intersects with personal attraction, when authority meets genuine connection." Victoria leaned forward, her elbows on the table, bringing herself closer to Maya. "And how do you navigate those situations, when the boundaries become complicated?" Maya's heart was racing now, but she maintained eye contact. "I think the key is honesty, acknowledging what's really happening instead of pretending it doesn't exist." "Interesting." Victoria's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. "So if someone were to find themselves attracted to a colleague, despite the professional complications, you'd recommend directness?" "I'd recommend," Maya said, her own voice soft but steady, "that they consider whether the connection might be worth exploring, regardless of conventional boundaries." The silence that followed was electric, charged with possibilities neither of them had explicitly acknowledged until now. Victoria stood slowly, moving around the table until she was standing beside Maya's chair. The proximity was intoxicating. Maya could smell her perfume, subtle and expensive, could see the slight rise and fall of her chest. "Maya," Victoria said, her hand coming to rest lightly on the back of Maya's chair. "I need to tell you something." Maya turned to face her, looking up into those green eyes that had captivated her for months. "What is it?" 3 weeks ago, I overheard your conversation with Jessica about hating your boss but finding her attractive. Victoria's admission hung in the air between them, transforming everything Maya thought she knew about their recent interactions. The revelation should have mortified Maya, but instead she felt a strange sense of relief. The pretense was finally over. The careful dance they'd been performing could end. How long were you standing there? Maya asked, her voice remarkably calm. Long enough, Victoria replied, her hand moving to touch Maya's shoulder lightly. Long enough to realize that I wasn't the only one feeling the tension between us. Maya stood, bringing them face to face, inches apart. And what are you going to do with that information? Victoria's smile was slow and deliberate, filled with promise. I was hoping, she said, that we might figure that out together. The following Monday morning felt different from the moment Maya stepped off the elevator. The office buzzed with its usual energy, but she carried with her the memory of Friday evening, the way Victoria had looked at her, the charged conversation that had ended with an invitation for dinner that weekend. They hadn't crossed any physical lines yet, but the emotional intimacy that had developed between them was undeniable. Maya tried to focus on her work, but her concentration kept drifting to Victoria's office. Through the glass walls, she could see the CEO in a meeting with the board of directors, her posture commanding and authoritative as always. But now Maya noticed different details. The way Victoria's hands moved when she spoke, the slight tilt of her head when she was listening intently, the rare, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. You're glowing, Jessica observed, rolling her chair closer to Maya's cubicle. Either you had an amazing weekend, or you're coming down with something that makes you look ridiculously happy. Maya couldn't suppress her smile. Just feeling good about the project I'm working on. Uh-huh. Jessica's tone was skeptical. The project that involves spending every evening alone with the Ice Queen? How's that going, by the way? Still finding her impossibly attractive and professionally frustrating? The irony wasn't lost on Maya. If Jessica knew how dramatically things had shifted, how Friday's conversation had opened doors she never thought possible, she'd probably faint. But Maya wasn't ready to share this development, not when everything felt so new and uncertain. Let's just say I'm seeing her in a different light, Maya replied diplomatically. Before Jessica could probe further, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. Her pulse quickened when she saw Victoria's name on the screen. Conference room in 10 minutes. Bring the Henderson files. The message was professional enough, but Maya caught the underlying warmth that had crept into their communications over the past few weeks. She gathered her materials and headed toward the executive floor, her anticipation building with each step. The conference room was empty when she arrived, but she could see Victoria finishing up her meeting next door. The board members were filing out, their expressions serious but satisfied. Maya watched Victoria shake hands with each of them, her professional demeanor flawless as always. When Victoria entered the conference room and closed the door behind her, the transformation was immediate. The formal mask slipped away, replaced by something softer and more genuine. How was your weekend? Victoria asked, her tone warm and personal in a way that would have been unthinkable a month ago. Productive, Maya replied, settling into her usual chair. I did a lot of thinking. About the project? Among other things. Maya met Victoria's gaze directly. About us, actually. Victoria took her seat across from Maya, but the distance between them felt different now. The table was still there, but the emotional barriers had largely dissolved. And what conclusions did you reach? Maya had rehearsed this conversation over the weekend, but now that the moment was here, she felt the need to be completely honest rather than strategic. I concluded that I don't want to wonder what if for the rest of my career. That some opportunities are too important to let fear make the decision. Victoria's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd say something like that. But, Maya continued, I also think we need to be smart about this. The company has policies, and your position makes everything more complicated. You're right. Victoria's expression grew more serious, which is why I've been thinking about how to handle the situation responsibly. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder Maya had never seen before. I've been working with HR and legal on something that could change everything for both of us. Maya's heart rate accelerated. What kind of something? Sterling & Associates is expanding. We're opening a West Coast office, and I need someone I trust completely to run the marketing division there. Someone with fresh ideas and proven strategic thinking. The implications hit Maya immediately. A transfer to the West Coast would remove the direct reporting relationship that made their attraction problematic. It would also represent a massive career advancement. You're offering me a promotion and a transfer? I'm offering you the chance to build something from the ground up, with complete creative control and a salary that reflects the responsibility you'd be taking on. Victoria paused, her eyes holding Maya's with unmistakable intent. And I'm also offering you the possibility of exploring this connection between us without compromising either of our professional integrity. Maya stared at the folder, her mind racing through the implications. When would this happen? The position would start in 6 weeks. That gives us time to finish the Henderson project and ensure a smooth transition. Victoria leaned forward slightly. Maya, I want you to know that this isn't contingent on anything personal between us. You've earned this opportunity based on your work alone, but it would create space for us to see what this is, without the complications of the current power dynamic. The offer was everything Maya had dreamed of professionally, but the personal implications made her head spin. Victoria was essentially restructuring her company to remove the obstacles between them. This is incredible, Maya said finally, and terrifying. The best opportunities usually are. Victoria's smile was understanding. Take some time to think about it, but Maya? She reached across the table and briefly touched Maya's hand. I need you to know that I haven't felt this way about anyone in years. You challenge me intellectually. You see possibilities I miss, and you make me want to be better at everything I do. Maya felt her resolve crystallizing. I don't need time to think about it. The answer is yes. To all of it. Victoria's expression shifted to something Maya had never seen before. Vulnerability mixed with genuine joy. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. As they sat in the conference room, the Manhattan skyline stretching beyond the windows, Maya realized that her whispered confession to Jessica had set in motion a chain of events that would transform not just her career, but her entire life. Sometimes the most dangerous words were the ones that led to the most extraordinary possibilities. 6 months later, Maya stood in her new corner office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the California sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that framed a view of Santa Monica's coastline. The Sterling & Associates West Coast division had exceeded every projection, thanks in large part to the innovative campaigns Maya had developed and the talented team she'd assembled. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victoria, who was flying in from New York for the quarterly review meetings. Landed at LAX. Can't wait to see what you've built. Maya smiled, adjusting the final presentation boards for the afternoon meeting. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of professional growth and personal discovery. The promotion had given her the creative freedom she'd always craved, and the distance from the corporate headquarters had allowed her relationship with Victoria to develop naturally, without the pressure of office gossip or policy complications. Their romance had unfolded gradually. Weekend visits, long phone calls that blended business strategy with personal conversation, and the slow building of trust that came from seeing each other in different contexts. Victoria had surprised Maya with her dry sense of humor, her passion for art museums, and her complete lack of pretension when they were away from the corporate environment. The office door opened, and Victoria walked in carrying a bouquet of Maya's favorite flowers, white orchids that somehow looked elegant even after the cross-country flight. These are beautiful, Maya said, accepting the flowers and a soft kiss that still made her pulse quicken after all these months. Not as beautiful as what you've accomplished here. Victoria gestured toward the bustling office beyond Maya's door, where the marketing team was putting finishing touches on presentations. When I walked through the main floor, the energy was incredible. Everyone looks excited to be here. That's because we're doing work that matters, Maya replied, moving to put the orchids in water. Remember that demographic research I was working on back in New York? We've applied those insights to 12 different campaigns, and the results have been extraordinary. Victoria settled into one of the chairs facing Maya's desk, but unlike their early meetings in New York, there was no formal distance between them now. They had learned to navigate the complexities of being both business partners and romantic partners, finding ways to keep their professional collaboration sharp while nurturing their personal connection. Tell me about the Henderson campaign results, Victoria said, pulling out her tablet. The preliminary numbers looked impressive. Maya opened her laptop and pulled up the presentation she'd been perfecting all week. We exceeded the original engagement targets by 200%. But more importantly, we shifted the entire conversation around their brand identity. As Maya walked through the campaign's success metrics, Victoria watched with the same intensity she'd always brought to business discussions. But now Maya could also see pride and affection in her expression. The balance they'd found between their professional and personal relationships felt natural in a way that their office dynamic in New York never had. "There's something else," Maya said as she closed the presentation. "I've been thinking about expanding the team further. There are 3 junior associates from the New York office who would thrive in this environment, and I'd love to give them the same kind of opportunity you gave me." Victoria's smile was immediate. "I love that you're thinking about mentorship and development. Who did you have in mind?" As Maya outlined her plans for team expansion, Victoria reflected on how dramatically both their lives had changed since that overheard conversation nearly a year ago. Maya had blossomed in the California office, developing confidence and leadership skills that had always been present, but hadn't had room to flourish in the more rigid corporate structure of the New York headquarters. "I have some news too," Victoria said when Maya finished her presentation. "The board approved my recommendation to make the West Coast division its own subsidiary. You'd be the CEO, with complete autonomy over operations and strategy." Maya's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely. You've proven that your vision and leadership can build something extraordinary. It's time you had the title and authority to match your impact." The offer was stunning in its implications. Maya would go from marketing associate to CEO in less than 2 years, leading her own company while maintaining the connection to Sterling and Associates that had started everything. "What about us?" Maya asked, the question that was always present beneath their professional discussions. "How would this change our relationship?" Victoria reached across the desk and took Maya's hand. "It would make us equals in every sense. 2 CEOs running connected but independent companies, free to be together without any questions about power dynamics or corporate policies." Maya felt tears prick her eyes as the magnitude of Victoria's gesture sank in. This wasn't just a promotion. It was Victoria restructuring her entire corporate empire to create space for their relationship to flourish without compromise. "You would do that for us?" "Maya," Victoria said, her voice soft but certain. "I would do anything for us. You've changed everything about how I see business, leadership, and what's possible when you find the right partner in both work and life." As the sun set over the Pacific, Maya looked around her office, at the successful campaigns displayed on her walls, at the team she'd built from nothing, at the woman who had transformed from an intimidating boss into the most important person in her life. "Yes," Maya said simply. "Yes to all of it." Victoria stood and moved around the desk, pulling Maya into her arms. "I love you," she whispered, the words still feeling new and precious between them. "I love you too," Maya replied, marveling at how a whispered confession she'd never meant anyone to hear had become the foundation for the most extraordinary chapter of her life. Sometimes the most dangerous words were the ones that changed everything for the better. And that's how one overheard conversation transformed not just 2 careers, but 2 entire lives. Maya's whispered confession about hating her boss but finding her irresistible became the catalyst for a love story that defied every corporate convention and exceeded every professional dream. What started as workplace frustration and forbidden attraction evolved into a partnership that revolutionized how both women approached business and relationships. Sometimes the words we think no one is listening to are exactly the ones that need to be heard by the right person at the perfect moment. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey from a Manhattan office building to the California coast. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories of unexpected connections and life-changing moments. And let me know in the comments. Have you ever said something you thought no one was listening to, only to discover it changed everything? I'd love to hear your stories of how the most dangerous words sometimes lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most powerful conversations are the ones we never planned to have.